we're going and continuing through the Sermon on the Mount in this series called Lights. And this whole goal and point of this series, Lights, is that we would shine like Jesus. That's our goal, to be more like Jesus. And Jesus broke down really a lot of the main topics and major topics of the day here in this Sermon on the Mount. It's the longest sermon we have in Scripture. It was basically Jesus bringing things to another level. He basically is calling people to a higher standard of living. And he said it for them then, and it's for us today. And so we can apply all these things that Jesus taught. And a lot of us think like Jesus, he was love and grace, and he was cool with everybody, and only called out the religious leaders. But he also, here in this sermon, this is like some hardcore stuff that Jesus teaches on. And he calls them to a higher standard of living. The Jews, the people who are supposed to be followers of God, so that's you and me, he's calling us to a higher level of living. So we believe, man, this is the living, breathing Word of God, that it's God's words for us. The primary way we speak to God is through prayer, but the primary way God speaks to us is through his Word. And so we go through this, we love it, we believe it, and we want to put it into practice in our lives. And so we've got through the first chapter of the Sermon on the Mount of Matthew 5, and now we're starting in on chapter 6. And I'm going to be reading today verse 1 through 4, and then verse 19 through 24. But before we do, I want to tell you guys a quick story. So I got married a little over 5 years ago. And when I first went through this process, we're engaged, and it's all exciting and fun, and we're like celebrating, and then my wife tells me that we have to do this thing called gift registry. And how many have ever done the gift registry thing in some way? All right, so she tells me we got to do this gift registry thing, and I'm like, okay, like what's that? And she's like, well, we're basically going to go, and we're going to go to Target, and we're going to pick out all the things we want. And then it goes on a list, and then people go to Target, and they get the list printed out, and they buy you what you want. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like, you just tell them what you want, and they get it for you. Like, this is cool, right? This is awesome. And then she's like, yeah, so you need to come with me. It should take like 3 or 4 hours. And I was like, say what? Like, that is not awesome. I am not a shopper. I don't like grocery stores, Target, no thing. In fact, part of our agreement when I married my wife, I was like, I will not do grocery shopping. I told her straight up. Literally, grocery stores give me anxiety. It's not about I'm not sexist. I'm not saying women belong in the kitchen. Okay, nothing like that. It's just a matter of I hate grocery stores, okay? And so she tells me it's going to take like 3 or 4 hours. And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm not gift registry. You got this. Like, you're good. Just like pick me out a plasma screen TV. Hopefully somebody will get me one of those, right? And she's like, Caleb, listen. You get a gun. And I was like, what? And she was like, you get a gun. You get to shoot stuff. And I was like, okay, I might be down with this, right? So I find out you get a gun. And you guys hear about that? Have you seen this? So you go to Target or wherever, and they give you a gun, and you get to shoot stuff like that you want. So I walk in, and they give me the gun, and I was like, yes. I know we're in downtown Sacramento, so guns are bad, whatever. But guns, man, it was cool. I got excited. So I roll in there, and we're start picking stuff out. I'm just shooting everything, of course, right? Like, I'm like, oh, trash can, beep, like, get it. I'm just shooting anything I can shoot. And she's like, we don't need that. I was like, oh, okay, my bad. And then I realized, like, this whole gun thing was seriously overrated, okay? Like, I got bored within, like, 5 minutes, and we walked around Target for hours picking things out. It was not fun. But then we came to our wedding day, right? And let me tell you, I do not recommend something that we did. I recommend getting married. I do not recommend something we did. So we did this thing where we were going to fly out not the day after our wedding, but the day after, because we wanted to give ourselves some time to rest. The night's so late, and people get up at 4 a.m. to try to fly somewhere. And so we decided we're going to give ourselves a day break. We'll stay at this hotel an extra night, and then we'll go out the next morning. That is a good idea. I recommend that if you're going to get married sometime, because it would have been crazy to get up early the next morning, especially if you're trying to take care of business, you know what I'm saying? So, but that's the issue, right? So here's what I do not recommend. The next morning, we planned a brunch with her parents and my parents and our family to open the gifts. So we roll in, and let me tell you about awkward, okay? Like, You roll into, here's brunch, and I'm walking in with my wife, and there's my dad like, how'd it go, son? Like, what do you say? I was like, yep, nailed it, right? Like, it's all good. I mean, I didn't know what to say, so it was like super awkward. And then there's her dad, right? Hey, Caleb, hey, how's it going? Had a great night, huh? Like, I mean, super awkward. So I do not recommend, don't do this, okay? Do not do the brunch thing. I felt I was red the entire morning, okay? The whole brunch process. It was, yeah, awkward. So anyways, so we, woo, okay, so we start, I'm going to tie this in, don't worry. So we start opening presents, right? So we're opening gifts and cards. I mean, there's just money falling out of everywhere. It was amazing, right? I'm like, 100, 200, I'm in the thousands now. And then people are just gifts. Here's all these things. My wife's so excited. She got all these plates and not napkins, but plates and blenders and all this stuff that I could care less about. She's like thrilled over the moon about. And as I'm opening all these things, I realized just how much our culture is entrenched in materialism. And so this week I was setting people up on social media. Like, I'm a little too active on social media, but I'm like on Twitter and Facebook, and I'm like, I'm going to tell you what I believe is the greatest issue for the American church this week. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of issues, but what I believe one of the greatest issues for the American church today is materialism. Hands down, as Americans, it's one of the hardest things to deal with to serve God and to not get sucked into this life of materialism, of stuff. And so the title of my message today is Status and Stuff. Because, man, we have a lot of stuff, and we love our stuff, and we want more stuff. But there's another thing, and Jesus here in Matthew 6, he really touches on these two topics of materialism. And the other thing that he touches on is the topic, and this is another one of the greatest issues, I believe, for us as God's people. It's the need for man's approval. We are desperately seeking after man's approval around every turn. And it's something that we have to really be careful in our lives to fight against, materialism and the need for man's approval. So here we go. I'm going to give you 3 quick points today, and then we're going to go out from this place and scatter well. But let's read from Matthew chapter 6, verse 1 through 4. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly I say to you, they have received a reward. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Let me pray. Jesus, speak to us. Speak through me. Give me the opportunity and the strength and the clarity to share what it is you want these people to hear and me to hear. And may we walk out of this place changed. In your name we pray. Amen. So I want to jump in here and talk to you guys about what this looks like to be a person who is about the things of God. A person who is about God things. And the first one is this, is we need to be about God actions. So I want to give you 3 goals of God-focused people today. 3 goals of God-focused people. And the first one is this, is to be about God actions. Now, verse number 1, it tells us that we need to beware of practicing our righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. But this leads to my first point, which is this idea of be about God actions, because I hear this term acts of righteousness that Jesus is talking about. And I got to be honest, I've read this verse and I've used this verse in my life to basically give me a free pass to not do anything. To basically give me a free pass to not give to the needy. Because I think, well, I don't want to make a spectacle of it. I don't want to grandstand before man. I don't want to be one of these hypocrites that Jesus is talking about. And so, you know what? I'm just not going to do anything. And I fall into this temptation. I know that a lot of you have too. You don't want to make a big deal about it. You don't want to be someone who's doing it for wrong reasons. You want to do it for right reasons. And so we almost give ourselves a pass to do nothing. And the problem is that too many of us, as God's people, are literally doing nothing. We're literally giving nothing. We don't give to the poor. We don't give to the needy. We don't give to nonprofits. We don't give to organizations, to missions organizations. We don't give to our church. We literally give nothing. And Jesus he's cautioning us to not do it before man, but he's also saying, like, when you do your acts of righteousness, which means you need to do them. You need to have times of giving. You need to be generous. And so when I was younger, I was an idealist, right? I'm in college, and I'm poor, of course, like no money, working minimum wage job just to like pay my way through school as much as I could, so I could buy food and all these kinds of things, pay for my car insurance. And I remember thinking, like, I go out to dinner with people, and I remember thinking, man, when I have enough money, when I'm at this point, when I get a full-time job, anytime I go out to dinner, I'm going to buy everyone's meal. When I come across a homeless person, no matter who they are, I'm going to buy them something. When I had all these ideas of what it would be like when I had a job, a full-time job, I was making good money. And then I got out of college, and I got a job, and I had like a lot of extra money. I'm single, got a good paying job, and I'm thinking like, wow, this is amazing, right? And I'm living this life, and I started thinking, though, about myself, and I started having this attitude, well, I mean, I still don't have that much, and when I get to this point in my income, then I'll start giving more and blessing more people and giving to more needy people and giving to my church more and giving to nonprofits and organizations that I feel that I'm supposed to be attached to. And then I'll do, once I get to this point in my income. And that kind of happened as a progression in my life for a little while. And finally, God one day just got a hold of me, and he said, if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. If you don't do it with what little you have now, you'll never do it when you have much. And so my challenge to you as God's people, those of you that are in here and you love God and you're trying to do what's right with what you have, I would say this: just do something. Give something. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can be small, but it must start somewhere. And too many of us are waiting. We're waiting for when we get to this point in our life. We're waiting for that full-time job. We're waiting until we have this amount of income. And God's saying, you need to give now. You need to bless now. You need to do acts of righteousness now. Now, my brother and I, we're really close in age. We're about 16 months apart. And I believe my sons are punishment to me for how me and my brother were to my parents. Already, right now, like my son, Kanan, he's 2.5, and my other son had just turned a year, Kai. Anytime Kai grabs a toy, guess what Kanan does? Takes it from him. I mean, constantly. They're always fighting over toys. I mean, the 1-year-old can't communicate. The 2.5-year-old can. Takes everything from him. That's mine. No, don't play. And he's always going, no, Kai. No, Kai. No, Kai. He's constantly, no, Kai. And then he body checks him, right? So I'm not kidding. Like, literally everywhere Kai walks, it's just, here comes Kana. Pow! Like, shoulder, knock him down. I mean, I don't know what to do. I've tried everything. I beat my child. No, I'm kidding. He just wants to punish his brother, but he never wants to share with his brother at all. I mean, everything's his. He doesn't want him to have any toy. Even if it is Kai's toy, it doesn't matter. Nope, that's mine. And so my brother and I were young, and so Star Wars, the last one, The Return of the Jedi, came out like the year I was born. And so for the next few years, it was extremely popular, right? The Return of the Jedi, all the Star Wars, of course. And extremely popular, and so the toys were like all the rage. So my brother and I are young. I'm not sure exactly how old, but we really desperately wanted, some Star Wars figurines, and we wanted, of course, Luke Skywalker and his X-Wing, and then we wanted, Darth Vader and his ship. And naturally, I was always the straight and narrow, like, do whatever my parents asked, compliant. If I did one thing out of line, I had to go tell my parents and confess. Like, I was just that person. And then my brother, the complete opposite, all right? Like, anything my parents said, do the opposite. Straight and narrow, yeah, right. And like, I'm here to go against the straight and narrow. Basically the opposite of what I would do. And so naturally, I thought, my parents are getting us these toys. We knew they were getting them for us for Christmas. My brother will get Darth Vader because he's evil. And I'll get Luke Skywalker because I'm on the good side of the Force, right? And so that's what I thought was going to happen. Naturally, that just makes the most sense. And so I opened the present that Christmas, and Luke opens his, and I look, and I get Darth Vader. And he gets Luke Skywalker and the X-Wing, and I'm like, what is this, Mom and Dad? And they're like, well, his name is Luke, because my brother's name is Luke. So he should have Luke Skywalker, and you get Darth Vader. And I'm like, what? Like, are you tripping? I'm the good one, right? He's evil. You know he's evil, okay? You're always having to punish him because he's evil. Give me Luke Skywalker. And so for the next, months, it probably didn't last very long, but we fought over these toys. I always was trying to get Luke Skywalker. He was always trying to keep Luke Skywalker and say, no, you got Darth Vader. And it was this constant battle. And it's so natural for us as human beings from a young age. We just want stuff. And it's all about us, isn't it? It's all about what I can get, what I have, mine, mine, mine. Just like my son, mine. Everything's his. Doesn't want to share, doesn't want to give. And God is telling us and calling us to be people of God actions, to be people of righteousness, to be people who give, who are sacrificial, who give of what we have because we have an abundance. I mean, some of you are like, I don't have an abundance. You do have an abundance because I guarantee you spend things on stuff that you don't need. I know I do. I spend things on stuff I don't need all the time. And I get convicted about it all the time. And then I say, I don't have any money to give away, God. I'm sorry. I'm too poor. Like, I'm struggling. I'm just a church planter, We're poor, no money. And God's saying, are you kidding me? Look at all this stuff you just bought. Look at all these things you just did. And you say you don't have anything? No, you're just about yourself. It's so easy to be about ourselves. But God actions are not about ourselves, but it's about others. And it's about God and what he's calling us to do. Number 2 today. We need to be about God's approval. So in verse 1 through 4, we see this great temptation for man. And one of the greatest struggles we have today, which is our desperate need for man's approval. We desperately seek after man's approval. We don't need it, but we seek after it. We think we need it. And here, what does Jesus say to them? He says, when you give, so again, when you give, Jesus is saying you need to give. We need to give. We need to be generous. When you give, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and the streets, that they may be praised by others. If our goal is man's approval, we've already lost God's approval. If our goal is man's approval, we've already lost God's. But if our goal is God's approval, it won't matter what man says. It won't matter if they approve of our actions or of what we're doing. It won't matter because our goal is God's approval, not man's. You see, man's approval is temporary, but God's approval is eternal. We're going to have temporary approval from man in this life. You will, I will. We get it all the time. We get approval here and there, and we love it, and we eat it up. But let me tell you something. Man's approval will always run out. It will always fail us. It will always end. But God's approval is eternal. It's never ending. In fact, one day we're going to stand before him, and he's going to say, if we had faith in him and we trusted him and we walked with him, he's going to say, well done, good and faithful servant. And his approval continues into eternity. And that's why we need to seek after God's approval first and foremost. Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work heartily as to the Lord and not for man. Now we see in verse 2 how he says that, don't be like the hypocrites in the synagogues and the streets who broadcast it for man to see and to bless them and to tell them how great they are. Now, I was looking up this term in the Greek word for hypocrite. And when Jesus spoke it, this term hypocrite was not actually a negative term, except of how Jesus applied it to these people. You see, hypocrite was literally originally used for Greek actors. You see, Greek actors, and they had plays back then. They had Broadway, back in Bible times. They had Broadway in Jesus' day. Not really Broadway, but you know what I'm saying. Then they had plays, and they put them on. And these Greek actors, they would play multiple characters, multiple roles. That was the norm. They'd be playing multiple roles in a long play. And what they would do is for each different role, they would put on a mask. And that mask would signify the character they were playing. And that was referred to as a hypocrite. It wasn't a negative thing. That was just the term that was used. an actor who would play different roles, putting on different masks, was a hypocrite. So Jesus takes this term and he applies it to these people who stand in the synagogues on the street corners and let everyone know all the good things they're doing. He's saying, you are wearing a mask. You're fake. You're only doing this so that man says how great you are, but you really don't want to do it. It's not really your heart, and it's not really for God. It's only for man. And you broadcast it like it's a God thing. Oh, I'm doing this. Look at what I'm doing. I'm in the synagogues. I'm in the church. I mean, that was their temple. I'm in the church. I've done all these great things, and I'm in the street corners. And look at me. I'm blessing these poor people. And all you're doing it for is so that man sees you, so that man gives you praise, because you want their adoration. You want man's approval, not God's approval. And God says, man, and Jesus says here, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Now, obviously, and throughout this scripture, throughout this Sermon on the Mount, Jesus uses deliberate overstatements. I talked about that, I think, last week. Deliberate overstatements. Jesus knows that you're going to know what your left hand is doing if you do it with your right. You know, your right hand is going to know what your left hand is doing. You're not stupid. He knows that. He gets that. But he was using it as a deliberate overstatement to emphasize that you need to really be careful that when you're giving, it's for the right reasons. You need to really be careful that when you're giving, it's for God's glory, and that you need to, some of you especially need to do it in secret because you're only doing it so that man will praise you. So you need to begin to hide it even from your other hand. He's using a deliberate overstatement. Now, guys, give me a second. I'm going to bring something out here. Trumpet. This is my grandfather's trumpet. So my grandfather, I moved back to Sacramento 3 years ago and joined his team. I was working with him. And after a year and a half, he was the epitome of health. One day, I was in my office, and he was supposed to be there, and he was late. And then someone comes up and grabs me and says, hey, your grandfather's passed out in his car. And so I run down the stairs. They're pulling him out of the car, and he was gone, dead. I knew he was already gone right when I saw him. Heart attack, instantly. God took him. But my grandfather loved to play the trumpet. And he was an amazing trumpet player. Amazing trumpet player. And in fact, there's a large church in town that they're like super contemporary, you know, like us, rock it out every time, and non-traditional. And he would speak there sometimes. And the last time I saw him speak there, he just decided he was going to do a trumpet solo before he preached. And he didn't even ask them. He's just like, I do what I want. Like, that was just, I mean, when you've been in ministry for like 50 plus years and you're almost 80 years old, you do whatever you want. And so he rolled in with his trumpet, and, you know, they just got done rocking out, and he's like, okay, now I'm going to do a trumpet solo. And he plays a hymn. And it was crazy because I sat there and I witnessed as almost everyone stopped breathing, it felt like, in the room. And I looked around, and tears were streaming down everyone's faces. And I'm witnessing this like, this is crazy. Why is this happening? And I realized it's because the gift that he had was so focused on the God that he served that everyone sensed it. And so I want to tell you right now, the gift that you have, and you all have gifts, when it is focused on the God that you serve, I believe it will take people's breath away. I believe that everywhere you go and whatever job you have and wherever you're at school, that your gifts people will see that, and there'll be something different about it. And it's because it's not about you, it's about the God that you serve. That's what it's about. So stop discounting, downplaying the gifts that you have. They're from him. And all you have to do is say, God, use them. And I guarantee you that it will impact people's lives forever. All right, this wasn't supposed to be this serious. This was going to be a funny thing. Okay. So, I can't play trumpet, just so you guys know. You all are like, oh, can he really play? This is going to be crazy. Nope, can't play any instruments. In fact, I am so unmusical, it's not even funny. All right. But look at chapter 6, verse number 2. When you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you. Sound no trumpet. And what we do, and man, I'm guilty of this. So I'm not like preaching at you, just so you know today, like this is for me. Is I do things and I want everyone to know about it, right? So I've done this, like I gave to a needy person on the street and I tweet it, right? I'm like, ran into a homeless guy, gave him $20. God bless him. Right? I mean, that's what I did. That's what we do. I mean, I'm just blowing my trumpet for everyone to see. Bought a pair of Toms. Now a child in South America has a pair too. Right? I don't know. I do this. You probably do. Oh, I've seen this, and I'm really guilty of this one. I go on a missions trip. Let me post a picture of me holding a child in Africa with flies on his face. Now everyone sees what a good person that I am, how spiritual I am. Now hold on a second. Some of you are like, dude, this is kind of harsh, Caleb. I'm saying things that I've done, all right? This isn't to call any of you out. I've done these things. I'm not against it either. I'm not against social media. I mean, I'm on social media too much. I'm not against broadcasting things that we do, as long as we're doing that for the right reasons. I believe things that we do, actions we take, can inspire other people. So I mean, our Instagram as a church, you'll see our Facebook, it'll have, when we do this outreach in Oak Park, there will be pictures up. Why? Because I believe it inspires others. And we want people to know we're a church that serves and loves. So don't get this wrong. Don't get this twisted. Like, if I see you post something, I'm going to call you out on Facebook or Twitter. Don't get this twisted. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, I believe it's good at times because it inspires others and it even keeps us accountable. But here's the thing. And here's the question I would encourage you to ask yourself. Why am I doing this? Why am I going to post this? Is it for my adoration so that I can get man's approval, or is it for God's approval? So again, we need to ask ourselves that in everything we do, every decision we make. Why am I doing this? Is it for God or is it for man? Let me tell you something right now. A lot of you have been saying yes to the wrong things and no to the right things. And God, when we say, God, why am I doing this? And God, should I do this? God will help you to say yes to the right things and no to the wrong things, to the things you shouldn't be saying yes to, and no to the things you should be saying no to. But when we're doing it for man's approval, we start saying yes to things we shouldn't say yes to, and we start saying no to things we should say yes to, and it's all because of man's approval. What is man going to see? What is man going to say? What is man going to think about me? Now, I've found I've done a lot of things in my life for man instead of God. A lot of things in my life for man instead of God. And when we learn the difference, that's when we learn what to say yes to and what to say no to. And understand this today. Man's approval will run out. And often, when you do things for God's approval, man will disapprove. And man will often curse you and call you out and try to crush your spirit, and you will have the decision to make. Am I going to be about man's approval or God's approval? Because doing what God asks us to do often will lead us to a place where man doesn't approve. Now, not always. I mean, I got to be honest, like as a pastor, I get a lot of man's approval. And so I know a lot of pastors. A lot of them are amazing men of God. There's a lot of them that I would not want to hang out with. And you know why? Because as pastors, we get a lot of man's approval. And that can go to our heads. And that can make us into people that God doesn't look down on very pleasurably, I believe. Because man's approval is intoxicating. Man's approval makes us feel good in the moment. And so, man, I mean, I come into church and I leave and people tell me like, man, Caleb, great sermon. You're such a great preacher, bro. Like, that was awesome. You're hilarious, man. You cracked me up that story. You blowing that trumpet. That was so funny. Man's approval. Now, what's cool is that sometimes we do things for God and we still get man's approval. And that's okay. Because I'm a words of affirmation person. So go ahead and keep them coming, all right? No, I'm kidding. But I'm a words of affirmation person. My wife knows that. She encourages me. She builds me up because that helps me. And so there's nothing wrong with man's approval. Understand that. As long as it's not what we're seeking after. As long as it's not our goal. Because we're going to get man's approval sometimes when we do what God's asking us to do. And we do things for the right reasons, and we do things for God's approval, and yet we still get man's approval, and that's okay. But understand that there may be times when the opposite happens, and we do things for God's approval, and man doesn't approve. And that's when things get real. And that's when we get to the place where we say, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Is it for me, or is it for God? Is it so man tells me how amazing I am, or is it so God gets all the praise and the glory? Because it's not about us. It has to be about him. It has to be about him getting praise, him getting glory, him getting honor, and not ourselves. Now, what's cool about God is that he knows that we need words of affirmation. He knows that we need approval and we need encouragement. And that's what's so cool about God, because when we do things for him, I believe he lets approval pour out on us from man, because it does bless us. And it does encourage us. And that's a reminder for all of us to be encouragers, to be uplifting, to speak words of affirmation into people's lives, because God uses those to bless people and to encourage them, to build them up. But at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, why am I doing this? Am I doing it for God, or am I doing it for man? Because if we're doing it for man, it's going to run out. That approval. And in fact, God said, and Jesus says here, he says they've already received what they seek after. They're seeking after man's approval and they get it. But my approval is not there. All right, I want to switch gears and read verse 19 through 24 as we close. So I'm switching a little gears here to materialism. Verse number 19 says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for he either will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money, which leads us to number 3, which is that we need to be about God treasures. We need to be about heavenly treasures. Not earthly treasures, not the materialism of this world. Right? There's a song, Material Girl, I live in a material world. That's what we are. We're material people living in a world of materialism. And I believe it's pulling our hearts away from God. In the American church, man, it is hard. We are surrounded by materialism. It's all we see every day on TV, on the internet, is just stuff. Buy this, buy that. You need this. You can't survive without it. But we need to be about God things, about God treasures, not earthly treasures. Stuff is temporary. You know that. Moth and rust destroy them. But our heart, our soul, our lives, our actions, those are eternal. Those will last. What we focus on, this passage tells us, what we emphasize in our lives, that's where our heart truly lies. That's where our heart is. I mean, Jesus says you can't serve God and the world. You can't serve the things of this world and the things of God. You can't do it. He says you're either going to hate the one and love the other, or you're going to love the one and hate the other. You cannot serve the world and God. You cannot serve the things of this world and God. You have to choose. Now, sometimes we think that money is evil, and money is not evil. In fact, we need money. I like money, right? Money buys me clothes and food and helps me take care of my family and gets me the stuff I need. the Bible tells us that the love of money is the root of all evil. It's about loving it. Do we love it more than we love God? Is it an idol in our life? Is it a God in our life? You know that's what idolatry is, right? There's a pastor that I like, and he puts it this way. His name is Mark Driscoll. He says, idolatry is when a good thing becomes a God thing, and thus that good thing has become a bad thing. Money isn't bad. It can be good if used in a right way. But when a good thing becomes a God thing, it becomes a bad thing. It becomes evil. So I want to ask you, where are you storing up treasures? Are you a person that's about stuff? Or are you a person about the things of God? And I've read this before and I've been like, what does that mean? Like Jesus says, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. How do I store up treasures in heaven? What does that even mean? I don't understand that. What Jesus is saying is your actions, your life, what you do, all of that, if you do it for God, you're storing up treasures in heaven. You see, all of this comes down to one thing. Excuse me. And I said it at the beginning of the message this morning. I said it at the beginning of the message when I was actually in prayer. When we prayed before we sat down after worship. You see, all of this storing up treasures in heaven comes down to one thing. And one thing only. Obedience. Obedience. What is God telling you to do with the things he's given you? What is God calling you to give of what he's blessed you with? Where is God calling you to go? What is God calling you to do with your time and your energy and your resources? If he's telling you to do something, you don't do it, guess what? Not storing up treasures in heaven. But if you say, God, whatever you want me to do, wherever you want me to go, whatever you want me to give, I'll do it. I'll be obedient. That's storing up treasures in heaven. I'm not going to do that again, just so you know. So I see this thing, and it obviously reminds me of my grandfather. In fact, it sits at my parents' house up on their mantle, and this morning I drove over to their house, and they were like in their room in the shower, I think, and I just stole it. I just snagged it and left, and they were probably like, what? Where'd the trumpet go? Like, don't worry, I'll return it. Probably freaked them out, but they still don't know where it is. But I went in and I grabbed it because I was thinking about this message, and I was thinking about my grandfather and his life and the person that he was. And it was crazy because at his funeral, I watched as person after person got up on stage and talked about all that he'd given them. Financially, advice. I mean, there's this guy that said, yeah, I was going to college, I couldn't afford it, and he just gave me like hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and he said the amount. I was like, what? I don't even know you. Who are you? He just gave you a bunch of money? Like, are you serious? And then I had countless people coming up to me that they didn't have the opportunity to speak from the mic, and they're like, yeah, man, I asked your grandfather, I was struggling, I asked him, he gave me this, you know, and like just all these people coming up to me telling me stories of how their grandfather gave of his finances, and I'd never heard these stories. These weren't things that he was telling everyone. And then other people said, yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, and I asked him to go to lunch or coffee, and he took the time and met with me, and then he told me this is the path I should go to and go down. I did it, and look at my life now. I'm so blessed. It's amazing where God's led me. And it was just like story after story of a man who wasn't about the treasures of this earth, but was about the treasures of this heaven. About the treasures of heaven. And it was so cool because I watched and I'm thinking about this message and I'm thinking about this, and he wasn't sounding his own trumpet, but guess what? People were sounding the trumpet for him. I mean, person after person, life after life that he had touched, that he had invested in, treasures in heaven he'd built up, and his trumpet is being sounded. He never had to sound it himself. And that's what God's saying to us today. Just be obedient. Focus on me, the things of me. Store up treasures in heaven and let other people sound your trumpet for you. Let other people sing your praises. But all it's about is me. Make it about me. Be obedient to me. What am I calling you to? Don't worry about man, worry about me. That's what God's saying to us today. That's what God's saying to me. And I stand before you today a broken failure of a person, because there's timeless moments and days in my life where I would say, man, I didn't store up treasures in heaven. I sought after man's approval instead of God's, but I don't want that to be the story of my life. I want the story of my life to be obedience. I want the story of my life to be God's approval. Would you bow your heads with me?